Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to this week's shir, Quasi Shushan Purim, at least in Yerushalayim. And thus, we took the liberty to have a late start. I believe the shir will be a little bit shorter than the average week. So tune in. Be'ez Hashem, next week already, I would like to start topics related to Purim. I think next week maybe I'm going to try to do a shir on Chol Moed, but following that to do more shirim even more directly on the Yontif of Pesach. If I say Purim, you might know why. It's the day after Purim. But today's shir is entitled An Empty Vacation Home. Getting involved in the principles of Nehena Chosar. And people who live here in South Florida, as well as you just mentioned, Purim in Yerushalayim, people who live in Yerushalayim, I think we share something in common. South Florida and Yerushalayim. In that, Baruch Hashem, for different reasons, South Florida, as Lahavdil, Yerushalayim, are tremendous vacation hubs. People are always looking to come on vacation. Here in South Florida, we see it mamish every week of the year. There always are vacationers coming to town, Baruch Hashem. And so to Yerushalayim, Eretz Yisrael in general, but Yerushalayim in particular, is a place which, Baruch Hashem, always has a lot of tourists, always has a lot of people coming on vacation. And one thing which stems from that is you have vacation homes. Homes which people have for vacation, sometimes for them, just for themselves, but other times to rent out, which are embedded within the Jewish community. That's maybe a contrast. You have places here in Florida, Orlando is a perfect example, where you have whole communities which are just vacation homes, just rental villas. Champions Gate and the likes in Orlando are communities which, for the most part, people don't live there here long, at least before the pandemic hit. And it's a different feel where you have a whole community, which are all vacation rentals, people going in and out all the time. Here in South Florida, in our neighborhood, other neighborhoods here in South Florida, but Huadin Yerushalayim, you could be a full-time resident, you could be a vacationer. I remember sometimes, definitely during peak season, during the midwinter breaks, during the summer, you could walk into Shul and sort of pinch yourself. Most of the people in Shul you won't recognize. They're vacationers, they're people just popping through. And sometimes it's hard to distinguish, you feel sometimes out of place in your own neighborhood. Okay? There are different theories. Some people, a block which has a lot of vacation homes. There are some people that feel that's, you're missing out on long-term neighbors. So, everything's a balance. Look, there are milos of having vacation homes. It definitely is something which there's a certain excitement. It's something that we ourselves can utilize when you need to find extra space to have people come for simcha, to celebrate. So the having the availability of vacation homes is a milo. There's no question that people coming on vacation inject money into the local economy, which is also a wonderful thing. That being said about vacation homes, there are definitely many scenarios in halacha which come up with them, and we're not here to give a share on all the different halachic issues that could come up with vacation homes. Probably one of the easiest ones is called hezek, which we might touch upon a little bit. Damage, which could occur. People pay, you put down a deposit for any damage, and fortunately, sometimes there is damage. And many people that won't rent out their homes, as for vacation rentals because they're afraid of the damage that could occur. There are homes which are vacation homes all year round, and it's also quite prevalent now in the community. People go away for a yontif, go away for a summer. They're able to find people to rent their homes. So there's a lot of business involving renting vacation homes. The scenario, though, that I want to focus on today from this case, we perhaps could branch out to other cases and other issues involving vacation homes. Mine is called an empty vacation home. That's actually very important. I constantly get friends in New York. Just this morning, I got a whole text. I got a whole text from a friend of mine who last minute, it looks like their family's trying to rent a home, here in South Florida, and is asking all different questions. These things happen all the time. The first thing I told them, the person who just reached out to me this morning, was at this point in the game, it's not so easy to find a vacation home, a rental. I think it's not even this point in the game. Probably already a month ago, I believe all the vacation homes were snatched up in this neighborhood. At one point, I remember hearing the number, there's like 100 vacation homes, which sounds like a lot, but there are a lot of homes in the neighborhood. And of what I know, they were all booked already going back weeks and weeks ago. So if somebody wants to come now to South Florida, there's probably two options. Number one, you could sometimes find someone going away that will rent you their home, like we mentioned before. Not a professional vacation home, but okay, someone going away, you can find, can rent someone's house. Alternatively, there exist these ghost houses. People that own vacation homes, they don't come by so often, they're not renting it out. They have a vacation home, it's just not being used. Now really those things, I use the term, ghost houses, because they sit there are homes in the community, which, okay, it's one thing if you have a vacation home which is constantly being rented out, okay, so you see the usage of the home. There are homes which you see, they're used maybe 2-3 weeks a year, that's it. It's not a vacation rental, the owners are not interested in renting it out. They don't need to do that. But they sit dormant. And they have homes like that. So what do you say about the following scenario? Okay. I'm a person, on my block, I have a neighbor, they live in England. They own a vacation home. They say, you know what? I'm a good neighbor. Do me a favor. Could you look over my home? Here's my keys. If there's a problem, you could, you have access. We don't rent it out. We just come a couple weeks a year. Now, that's the type of scenario where sometimes, let's say someone comes to me and says they're stuck. They need a place. They have to be here. They got stranded here. They're stuck here. Can I allow this family that's stuck to stay in this home, which I know is unoccupied? I know the owner's not there, not coming for another month. Now, obviously, the right thing to do is to ask them. It's their home, you have to ask them permission. Obviously, pashtus, that is the right thing to do, is to ask permission if someone could stay in their home. But let's say, especially I made the case there in England, there's a time difference, people got stuck here last minute, it's mamish, a big tzarech. Could I say, look, I have the keys, I'll let them in, I'll let them stay. Again, let's even bypass the first step. Am I allowed to do that? Let's say I did that. I let them stay in this vacation home. I had the keys. I let them in. They stayed for a couple nights in this home. When I tell the owner about it, could the owner say, hey, once they stayed in the home, please collect from them $1,000, $500 a night times 2. We should charge them $1,000. Is one able to charge somebody who stayed in their home without their permission? What would you say? Let's talk simply. No seemingly damage occurred to the home. They stayed in the home. If they would have found a rental, okay, they would have paid $500 a night to stay there. But there are no rentals. It got stuck here on Pesach. There's no rentals. But I know of that house 2 doors down. I have the keys. No one's there. I let them in. They stayed 2 nights. Would they have to pay for the benefit of staying in that vacation home? That's the shaila of today's share. You'll say the people are makar tov, that they stayed in the house. Of course they should pay. They're willing to pay $500 a night if they've gotten a vacation rental. But here's where the quote-unquote cheap Jews sometimes come in. Is once you get something for free, people are not so quick to spend money for it. And thus, the shaila is, what would one say? Can they be charged now, sort of retroactively, for staying in that home for 2 nights? That's the shaila that we're going to talk about today, and hopefully through this get a better picture of the laws of benefiting from other people's homes. Just give me 30 seconds. I'll be right back. Took less than 30 seconds to make sure the AC was on. Now, this shaila is really a shaila in the Gemara in Baba Kama. And for those of you that have the sheets, it's Baba Kama Daf Chaf. If you don't have a sheet, you're welcome to take a Talmud Bavli off your shelf. So I'm going to read the Gemara. This is Chaf and Aleph. It's about 6 lines from the bottom of the page. Very interesting and perhaps famous Gemara. Amalei Rav Chizda Rami Bar Chama. Chizda said to Rami Bar Chama, Lahadi Gavan Ba'orta B'Tchuma. I wasn't there today in yeshiva. Tchuma, Mefarshim say, Rashi says, that the person was out of town. He wasn't able to come to yeshiva. So he said, what I miss in yeshiva? He says, the Ba'ilan Mili Mal Yusa. Oh, you missed a great, enjoyable share today. What was Amar my Mili Mal Yusa? What was this great, enjoyable share today? Right? I know people hopefully express these sentiments sometimes on a Sunday morning. What was the great share that you missed today? Amarle, Hadar b'chatzer chaver shlomi daito, sarach lahaus lo schar lo ein sarach. If you live in your friend's home without permission, do you have to pay rent? Do you have to pay schar for that or not? Now we'll see in a moment, the Gemara is basically asking our question. So the Gemara first analyzes, Heichi Dami, what's the case? Ilema b'chatzer delo kaimula agra, the gavra delo avid l'megar. The Gemara says we have to weigh 2 factors. The first thing we have to do when we look at an issue, should I have to pay for the benefit of staying in someone's vacation home? There's 2 questions to ask. Number 1, are you a gav, are you a person who normally rents out, are you somebody that would spend money to rent a vacation home? If you couldn't get this one for free, would you pay money for a vacation home? That's A. And B, the home that you're staying in, is that normally utilized as a vacation rental or not? So the Gemara sets up, if the answer to both questions is the affirmative, yes, I'm a guy who would spend money on a vacation rental, and the house which I'm staying in is a house which is normally rented out. So the Gemara says, really the Gemara starts off, the other way. If you answer negative to each of the two, I don't usually spend money renting out, this house is not usually rented out, so Zelo Nehena, V'Zelo Chosar. I'm not considered benefiting, and you're not considered losing. If the people that I put into that house, or as a family, they're not coming to Florida to vacation. All of a sudden, you have these cases. They came to Florida. Their child needed surgery in one of the wonderful hospitals here in South Florida, and that's why this family from Yerushalayim ended up here, and they were stuck without a place to stay. So they're not benefiting in the sense they wouldn't spend money. Maybe they can't even afford to spend money to have a rental. They're looking for a place that they can stay for free. And also the house which I found them was not a vacation rental. It was someone's vacation home, which is dormant and not used. So in such a case, the Gemara says it's pashut, one does not have to pay. Obviously, like we mentioned before, ideally you should ask permission to utilize someone's home. Even if I have the keys, it's not my house. I have access, but it's his house. Of course I have to ask permission. If I get permission, then of course they can do whatever they want in the home. We're talking about a case you couldn't ask permission. The owner of the house lives in England. There's no way to call them in time. His family got stuck here. So that would be a din of Nehena V'Zelo Chosar. Zelo Nehena V'Zelo Chosar. Neither one is benefiting. I'm not benefiting if they're not losing. So in that case, it's pashut to the Gemara. One does not have to pay. The Gemara says, what would be another option what the case could be, where the Gemara has a shayla? The Gemara is looking, where's the case which they debated in yeshiva? It can't be the case where the people are not going to spend money on the vacation rental. And the house is not a vacation rental, it's just a vacation home. Because that case, again, pashut you wouldn't pay. So the Gemara says the opposite case. Let's say the case is both affirmative. It's a house which is normally rented out. The Gavra, the Aved Megar, and this is a family. These are people that normally spend money on the hotel stay, on a vacation home. Nehena V'Zelo Chosar. The Gemara says in such a case, for sure you have to pay, because you're benefiting and they're losing. For sure, if I would spend money and you would normally rent it out, so I'm gaining if you wouldn't charge me, and you're losing if you don't charge me. So that's called Nehena V'Zelo Chosar. This guy's benefiting, this guy's losing, and for sure in that case you're chayav. So the Gemara is still grappling, where's the case where they have this debate in yeshiva whether you have to pay or not? The Gemara answers, it's a vacation home which is not usually rented out. The Gavra, the Aved Megar, but a person would pay money. Now this is how I set up the case. Remember the case I asked, I'm coming to Florida. I'll pay money for a vacation rental. There aren't any left. Nothing left. Secondly, the house, though, that I'm staying in, you can't get a vacation rental now. The only thing I was able to get was a house, a vacation home, which is not usually rented out. So I am benefiting, but the owner of the house is not losing. He wouldn't spend money, he wouldn't charge money to begin with to rent it out. So I'm benefiting, and this guy's not losing. The Gemara says that's the shayla. My. Matzi amrle my chesarticha. Can I say to the owner of the home, hey, why are you charging me? What are you losing out? You would have rented this house to anyone else anyway. My chesarticha, what are you losing? Therefore, I don't have to pay. Oh, Dilma, the Gemara says. Matzi amrle hasanis. Or maybe the guy could say back, hey, but you benefited from my home. I own the home. You benefited from the home. Why can I charge you? That's simply the Gemara's question. So, Pashtus, the Gemara seems to set up that in our case, when someone's looking for a vacation rental, can't find one, his friend sets him up in some vacation home which is not rented out, would I have to pay rent or not? That's a shayla. Now, Tosfos adds a little bit of a monkey wrench into this situation. And you'll see all these steps that we're going through play a major role. This Gemara comes up very prominently in halacha. Tosfos deals with a very simple, what we call mathematical equation. The Gemara went through three possibilities of what the case is. Could have been both. Remember my two boxes. Is the person staying in the home someone who normally would pay for it? Is the rent, and the Gemara dealt with the case with both affirmative, they're both negative, and the Gemara said the question is in the case of where I am benefiting, but the owner of the house is not losing. Tosfos brings up there could have been a fourth case. What about a case where it is normally rented out, so there is a loss, but the guy is not benefiting. The guy wouldn't spend the money. That's the fourth possible case. Variables over here. What would be the halach of that case? Why did the Gemara talk about such a case? So Tosfos paskins, that case is simply pater. Zeh lo nene, v'zeh chosar. The guy not benefiting, and the owner of the house losing. That's pasha your pater. Why don't I have to pay? The owner lost. If I wouldn't be in the house, he'd be able to rent it out to some nice Hasidic family from Williamsburg. The fact I put this family in there, it prevented, they lost out a night. They come in the middle of the night, there's someone sleeping in their beds. Goldilocks, what's going on over here? So there's a loss. I would have rented it out to this family. The fact that you stooped in this other family, there's a loss. So Zok Tosfos is a very interesting idea. Tosfos says such a case, this happens to be Machlokas Rishonim. Shulchan Aruch might take the other side too, but it's important for the setup of the sugya. Tosfos says in such a case, halacha is your pater because it's halachically considered a grama. I'm only responsible for damage, which is direct damage. Right? Somebody smashes a car into someone else's car. That's direct damage. Right? You smash the car into someone else's car. Your animal does damage. That's also a form of damage you have to pay for. But when you do damage, it has to be something directly done by you. If something is more what you call a grama is not an easy term to simply translate. But the basic idea behind grama is indirect damage. By this family being in the home, memela, there's no room for this other family to come in. In such a case, halachically, you don't pay for it, you're not chayiv for it. Grama is aser, it's Potter b'dinei adam, Bezdin can't charge you for it. V'chayev b'dinei shemayim. You're not doing the right thing, Hashem's going to pay back. And that's always a very important principle. Even cases where Bezdin doesn't have the authority to charge you, to punish a person for such a thing, but Hashem picks up where Bezdin can't. And there's a din of Chai B'dinei Shemayim. So, in this case where the damage to the owner of the home that he can't rent it out to someone else is sort of through the back door, pun intended, that this family got in, that's not direct damage, and you'd be putter in that case. Okay? So far so good. We set up the cases of the Gemara, and the Gemara has a shayla in the case that I gave, where I'm putting in a family that would spend money to rent out in a home which is not normally rented out. It's an empty vacation home. It's not a rental. There's one more step that's important before we delve a little deeper. B'nai Yeshua, Major Achron, here has a very important question. He says, once you have this Tosos, and this Tosos says, in general, there is no damage here. When we talk about Chosar, when we talk about the loss of the owner, I own a vacation rental. I would rent out this home to somebody. And if you have someone else in the home, I can't rent it out. That's not viewed halachically as damage, as hezek. You can't charge for that. That's indirect damage. Could you do it? Of course you can't do that. But you can't charge for it. It's a grama. So if that's so, Frek Tosas a question. Excuse me, the Bnei Yeshua question. What then is the difference between the case which the Gemara is not sure about, Zenena v'zelo chaser, versus a case of Zenena v'zeh chaser? The Gemara said, if the owner, if this is really a vacation rental, which I'm putting this family up in, then for sure they have to pay. But if it's a vacation home, then the Gemara says, I'm not sure. They're benefiting, but the other side is not losing. But either way, you can't charge for a rental. You can't, once there's a family in there, you can't, they didn't do damage to you. That's indirect damage. It's a grama. Grama we don't pay for. That's the question which all the Achronim really ask. And the Bnei Yeshua has a revolutionary, very important concept here. The Bnei Yeshua injects into this Gemara, even though that's not clearly seen on the surface of the Gemara. But the Bnei Yeshua understands what's the reason to say why I shouldn't pay, or the guest in the home should not pay. Let's go back to the basic case. Zenena v'zelo chaser. I'm putting in a family that normally would pay money in an empty vacation house. Right? Could be at the beginning of this year, some people said, of course they have to pay. It's my home, they stayed in my home. What's the reason? The Gemara says, what do you lose out? What do you mean what I lose out? It's my home. If you stay in my home, of course I have the right to charge you. It's a very important concept. That he shouldn't behave like a person of Sodom. This is a very important concept. The concept is that if you're not losing, why is it that you have to charge the guy? Mina Sodom. Why are you charging a guy? If you're not losing, I charge them. This comes up probably in a lot of cases. Kofin Alava Mida Sodom is a concept in the Torah. It's probably under the guise of a Sisa Hayashav Atov. Person should do what is just, what is right. And it's an element in halacha which might be sort of the merging of good midos. Think about it. Right? If Why should I charge a person rent? It's a vacation home. I'm not in the business of renting it out. I have to charge people rent. I have to charge people rent. They're going to let them benefit. Let another Yid benefit. If you're not losing, let him benefit. Why should you make him pay? Well, I could get money out of him. He's ready to pay the money. So what? But you're not losing. And if you're not losing, the Gemara here is a tzad that you shouldn't charge him. Now, I don't want to extrapolate this too far, but let me just say it over another concept. You know, right now in South Florida, for example, for Yom Tov, and my wife tells me this is something which has changed in the past couple decades here in South Florida. My wife remembers when she was growing up, okay, if you wanted to have guests over for Yom Tov, it'll be relatively easy. We had a nice little neighborhood here. Someone goes away, and you ask a friend, a neighbor, can you have their home? Look, obviously you're going to benefit by having your guests there. And hopefully, seemingly they're not losing. You know, they're going away for Yom Tov anyway. Their house is sitting idle. So why not? You rent out your house, you'll lend out your house for a family to stay there. And so too, Chesed works the other way. It's a boomerang. When you need a place for your guests to stay, making a simcha, and you have a friend and neighbor who has room in their house, or even better, they're going away, they have a whole house. So sure, you could ask them for a house. But really, the whole concept of charging, why should you charge? If your home is not usually a vacation rental, you're not really being chosar or anything, why should you charge? Even the person's benefiting, I know the person would pay good money. But so what? That's the concept which the Pnei Yeshua says is really underlying this Gemara. Now I understand in today's world, today's market, you know, every house is worth money, and if I wouldn't lend it out to this person, someone else is going to throw a crazy amount of money at me. So, okay. Look, it could be in the past couple of decades things changed. Economics changed. But the concept in the Torah in general, though, means if you are not losing, granted someone's benefiting from your home, but why do you have to charge them? That's the concept, the tzad of the Gemara of Maiches Artichach, Kofin Alav Amida Sedom. Now I want to show a couple other steps in the Gemara, but you know what? I want to maybe fast forward just to show the strength of this svara. If you look in the Shulchan Aruch, it's on the sheets, Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat, Siman Shin Samach Gimel, where it says, it's in the second line of the piece, I'll start from the middle line, Im also Chatzar Ina Asiyah. If the home is a home which is not normally rented out, what do we pass in halacha? Do we take the tzad to say Zanev is a chaser, is pater, or do we take the tzad to say that you're chayiv? So look at the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch paskins im also chaser. Eina asiyah liskar, eina tzarech lahalas loskar. You do not have to pay for it. We paskin zanenev is a lo chaser is pater. We paskin kofil of amid sedom. That this really is a strong halachic principle that we don't charge you. You can't charge a person. Okay, very important halacha to know. But we're not finished yet, so hold on. Going weiter in the Gemara, there's a Gemara on Chafam and Beis, Tashma, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Avze Ador B'Chatzar Chavero, Shalom Idaito, Tzarech La'al Soskar. If a person lives in someone else's house, without his permission, he would have to pay. So the Gemara says, Shmamina Zenena v'zelo Chosar chayiv. The Gemara says, it sounds like Rabbi Yehuda holds, Zenena v'zelo Chosar is chayiv. So the Gemara knocks it off. And it's good they knock it off, because we said, the Shulchan Aruch paskins, Zenena v'zelo Chosar is pater. So how then, why would Rabbi Yehuda say that you're chayiv if we paskin pater? Shani halsa mishum shachrusa da shaisa. There it's different. Rashi explains the case. Shemachsa lo aksalim. When you keep your family of 10 inside that home for a week, you're darkening the walls. Hilka chasaru. Therefore, in such a case, it is considered a loss. Avabayis yashan lo. We wouldn't say this by an old house. Zakt, the Gemara, very interesting idea, and this too is brought la halacha. And in fact, maybe I'll read you the halacha to show you how far it goes. If you look at the halacha, O Siv Zayin, again, Shin Samach Gimel in Choshen Mishpat, Siv Zayin, Yish Omrim, Dikshe'ena Chatzar Omed Liskar. The house is not normally rented out. Damrin the inner circle house will scar, which we paskins, and then it's all chaser's potter. In the chasra fil davar muat. What though if the owner loses out even a small amount? Kigoshu bayis chadash. It was a new house. That this guy is a brand new home. We just built a nice vacation home. I let the guy stay in the house, and it doesn't have the beautiful paint job that it did. It's not fresh out of the showroom. So look what the Shulchan Aruch paskins. Aval pi she'ena hefsid oso shachrusa el ma'at. Even though the loss, come on, how much is the loss from darkening the walls? Not so much. There's not a big loss. Nevertheless, al yodu magagal of kolaschar kefi mashenena. You're not just going to pay to update that paint job, those walls that you darkened. The Shulchan Aruch paskins, you have to pay the full price for using that rental, that vacation home, not a rental, for using that vacation home for a week. Yeah? $500 a night. That's not going to end up being cheap. All that I did was darken the walls. Why is a very interesting halacha? On the one hand, we're paskening Zenena v'zelo chaser is potter. If someone ends up staying in my empty vacation home, I put someone there, they don't have to pay. But once there's any type of loss to the home, any type of damage to the home, they don't just have to pay for the damage. Rather, now they're paying for the full night's rental. Now look, if the damage was more than the rental, of course they're going to pay for the full damage. But here we're talking about when the damage is relatively minuscule. Very small amount of damage they did darkening the walls. Nevertheless, now they're paying the full price for the rental. How do you understand that? It's black and white halacha and Shulchan Aruch. So this Pnei Yeshua that we used earlier says, I understand that halacha well. Because the halacha, as we explained, is really, of course, if I own a home and someone stays in my home, I have rights to charge for the benefit of staying in my home. Granted, my home is not a vacation rental, but of course, I own the house. I could, assuming that if it's in the local bylaws, I could sublet it to someone else. Important halachas. You have to make sure you're following Dina de Malchus Dina, and you're allowed to sublet and rent out these homes. Important to note. But assuming I have rights, I'm allowed to rent it out. So why are you telling me that Midas Adom I shouldn't charge? So we said there's a svara. Come on, Jews shouldn't be like Sodomites. Just you should be happy that another Jew is benefiting from your home. You wouldn't normally pocket the money, make money off it. So let him enjoy it without charging. But that's only to the point where there's no loss incurred to you. Once there's a loss incurred to you, then you have a right to charge him the full price of a rental. But it's a small loss. The answer is because you're not paying for that loss. You're paying for the hana. I have full rights to charge for hana. It's sort of, I always have a right to charge for hana, except there's a blockage. There's a yashrus against me. It's Midas Sodom. How can I charge for that? But all it takes is a small little amount of a benefit, excuse me, in this case, a loss that I'm incurring. My walls are darkened. So then in that case, I do have the right to charge fully for the hana. So practically speaking, now it depends. The way Rashi said over the Gemara, not every case is there darkening of the walls. If you have an old house, doesn't mean that people stay in your house, now they're really making it worse. No, you can't tell the difference. There are marks everywhere. If you have a beautiful new home, you have a pristine home, and someone darkens it, okay, now you have the right to charge them. But you can charge them for wear and tear. But if your home already is an older home, not every case, and I saw this in the postscript, not every case, you could have a family, you could have a couple just staying there, sleeping there at night, they're in and out very infrequently in the home. So that's not such a case. You wouldn't be able to charge them shachrusa da shaisa. But that's another, I think, important aspect, is it's a balance. Yashua says, the Svara says, I shouldn't charge them just because I own the house and just because I can make money off them because they're ready to spend money anyway. No. There, the scales would tip in the favor of the renter, of the person staying in the house. The squatter, we should really call him. No, let the squatter stay. You're not losing anything. But the moment you have any type of loss, then you can charge them. I saw an interesting shayla connected with this in one of the modern Svarim. Now, Alan, I don't know the laws of rentals here in our neighborhood. But let's say this is a shayla posed in Eretz Yisrael. Let's say there's a vacation home, which the way it works is if I'm only there, let's say 6 months of the year, I don't have to pay taxes. Right? If I'm not in the home, so there are certain property taxes, certain local taxes, which they want me to have the home, fine, but the local government doesn't make you pay taxes. But let's say my house was used, my custodian, the person watching over my home, gave it out to somebody, and people were in it at a time when I normally wouldn't be in. And right, the NMB code compliance cars are driving around, and they notice someone's in the house, someone going in and out of the house. It's not the time of year that someone's supposed to be there. And all of a sudden they go and this is why they have these code compliance cars going around the neighborhood. They find, okay, now we can charge you taxes. Now, in terms of the person staying in the home, did he cause the person to pay the taxes? Well, in a very indirect way, what do I do to you? I'm the guy staying in the home. What do I do to the owner? It was, look, I happened to come out at a time where the government saw and they decided now that they have to charge you taxes for the whole year, even though really, it's not the whole year, it's really, just stay there for a week. Who even said that it was a just enactment of this law that you have to charge them the taxes. It doesn't matter. Even if it's an indirect damage, a grama, even maybe unlawful, still if there's any loss incurred in any possible way through the person staying in my home, now I have a right to charge him. That's what Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein Paskins, I found this in the Sefer Chashukei Chemed, that Rabbi Zilberstein paskins in such a case that one would have to pay now for the rental, for the usage of that home, even if it was not a vacation home, it's not a vacation rental, you still would have to pay. Once the owner incurs any real loss here, even the loss through a grama, that would be sufficient to now have the right to charge him. So maybe we'll hold the topic over here, but we definitely see from here important principles. That in general, there is this principle of Midas Sodom, which says if I have a vacation rent house, which is not a rental, and someone ends up staying in my home. Now most poskim, we spoke this out before, the custodian doesn't really have rights to just put someone in the home without asking the owner. If the owner told the custodian, look, if you ever find someone stuck, you have a right to use my home, that's one thing. But we're talking about a case that never was spelled out. So most poskim say you have no right lechatchila to begin with to go into that home. There is a Mordechai, there is one Rishon who goes as far as saying, even lechatchila, you would say kofen alav midas sodom. That's how powerful this svara is. Don't charge a Jew, don't disallow a Jew when he could benefit if you're not losing. That's how far it goes. Most poskim don't pass him that way. They say for sure lechatchila, you could object to the guy going to your home. But the question really is, once he was there, you find out afterwards, do you charge him or not? That's this debate of Midas Sodom or not, which go Shulchan Aruch Paskins. We do say Kofen of Midas Sodom, and you should not charge the person. But when there's any possible loss, when there is any, I shouldn't say just possible, when there is practically any loss, then you would have the right to charge him. Okay? So, therefore, like many things in halacha, everything is a balance. And on the one hand, as Jews, we should always look to do chesed, especially around the Yom Tov of Pesach coming. Everyone has so much stress going on. And although hopefully this won't be as crazy and stressful as last Pesach, where last minute people were stuck at home making Pesach with this new pandemic, which is just sweeping the entire world. Hopefully this year people's plans could plan out and could stay the same, and hopefully there aren't last minute quarantines and lockdowns and who knows what. And we should all be zocha to spend Pesach for harvacha, in the vacation rental, in a borrowed home, wherever we are, and we should all be zocha to a chag kosher v'sameach. Thank you everybody for listening, and have a wonderful week.